Hello students, at Khan Global Studies we are launching Ethics and Essay Module 2026. Ethics module will be taken by another teacher, Gautam sir, and I will be taking the Essay module here. And I would like to tell you in very briefly some salient features or some important aspects of the essay paper that we will be doing here. The first thing is that we have designed the essay paper in such a manner that it makes you feel that as if that from the day one you are learning to write a good essay. And so a classroom becomes a kind of the microcosm of activity. So all the time you are constantly learning and changing your approaches, because essay paper is generally considered to be quite different in comparison to other papers. And it's just a game of mindset. So you have to change yourself into thinking that the essay paper is not like the other general studies paper or optional papers where you have got a study material, you read it, you mug it, and you finally practice a lot and go to the examination hall, you write it. Because UPSC has planned the essay paper in such a manner that it tests quite different faculties. So when I say the mindset, what actually it means that it tests your imagination, logical thinking, and diverse approaches to an issue, and to reach a powerful or convincing conclusion. So how it becomes important? Because you do not have any practically speaking any syllabus or any study material that possibly could be straight away told that you need to read about, and it just gives you a sentence or a topic. So imagine just a sentence or a topic or a quote, and you have to develop it into 1200 words. But we generally believe that anyone can write an essay, but when it becomes a competitive examination, so everything starts becoming very, very important. So the way you look at metaphorically at the topic, that is looking at the finding the or imagining or thinking about the different dimensions of the topic, maintaining a logical, coherent approach towards that, and the diverse approaches to an issue just to prove that argument or that quote. So that is how it has been, UPSC has been slowly changing its approach, and it has now finally culminated in the last few years. And now the way it's being put, many people have begun to call it say philosophical essay papers, but then I choose not to call it philosophical. What is the problem with the calling these topics as philosophical? You might have seen many teachers, many experts call it that the topics are philosophical. The problem is that it puts you in a groove. Forcibly, it makes you think that you need to have some kind of the good command of the philosophy topics, but actually it is not. In reality, this topic is just reflective or abstract ideas, because the moment you say philosophical, it intimidates those students who are not coming from the philosophy backgrounds. So in our classroom, And the approach that we are adopting is that we have the fair amount of understanding the kind of background the many students are coming from. Some have got difficulties relating to command of English language. Some already they are intimidated thinking that it's the philosophical the topics. So they keep asking me question. Do I need to have some command of the philosophical topics or the understanding of the philosophers? It's not that important, but still a little bit that you learn during the ethics papers and some of the abstract ideas that we discuss in the classroom in the around 15 plus classes that we do, you get to learn a lot. And the kind of language that I speak in the classroom, simple, formal English, and the kind of the language that you write in your examination. So, in the classroom itself, the kind of language we speak while we discuss almost the same language that is written in your essay paper, and the questions that you ask that we constantly discuss, and the classroom itself, you are virtually almost all the time learning the practical tricks, and occasionally you are writing, framing certain sentences, the opening sentences, introductions, and other ideas that we are constantly doing in the classroom itself. And our focus is always on scoring marks. So we are not doing all these things to become just scholars or becoming great essayists. No, the focus is on scoring high marks because many people now have begun to believe. Now, thankfully, the idea is sinking in that essay paper is a low-hanging fruit. Low-hanging fruit means with the amount of efforts that you put in trying to write a good essay, that is much less in comparison to other papers that you work very hard on. And still there is a great chance of substantially increasing your score. So, in recent times, many students who have been successful, they have invariably scored very well in the essay paper. But now let's look at the journey of the UPSC in itself, because the UPSC in the earlier, for example, a decade back, when the so-called Tathakathit, so-called philosophical topics were introduced for the first time, they started coming, the UPSC was quite liberal with the marking scheme. But for the last 2 years, and especially the last year, the scores have slightly gone down. So even the toppers, they have not scored the beyond 127, 28. 130 is probably the 120s is the range where the very high scoring students are doing. But what is the reason for that? The reason for is that for such a long time, the UPSC has been quite indulgent, quite liberal in giving marks to students. But now they are expecting a little more. They are expecting your writings to be very substantial. They want your writings to have all the important dimensions, and they are also looking at the elements of logic, coherence, okay, completeness, and diversity. So, in our classrooms, we have adopted a very, very powerful approach that we generally call it here Saheli. And this is the approach that has been quite popular. But in the recent times, if you watch a lot, say, the social media or YouTube, that you might have noticed that some people have also started, some people are arguing that the Hegelian dialectics, that is method of TAS, that is thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, and this is the approach that requires to be written to an essay. But generally we don't agree here, because the problem is that those people who are emphasizing too much on this approach, This is the only approach that is required, is something like that. Suppose if you have got a solution that is a hammer, then you tend to see every problem as a nail. So that means you unfortunately you give up, or rather eschew the variety that possibly could be there, and the many topic may not simply give to this. But still, in the classroom, now that the variety has expected from the students, so we also talked about the scientific, social, economic, historical, ethical, legal, Indian, and international. This is the variety of the issues that we take up. Apart from that, since the new trend is developing, and many students are quite curious about it, so so we also talk about a bit about the Hegelian dialectic methods, but on certain topics where there is a possibility that some counter argument or the contrarian argument that possibly could be taken up, so we also help the students learn it, and we try to make it as simple as possible. So simple at the kind of the language that we speak, that we write. Many students are quite intimidated while talking about many abstract ideas. But again, we try to simplify these things for the students so that they can approach the essay topics. For example, this is the most popular approach where your essay should be had the diverse elements. So imagine it becomes something like that. So it has got the social elements or social aspects of a topic. Then you have got the scientific aspects. Then you have got the historical aspect that you take up. Then you take economic. Invariably, nearly every topic has got a very, very important aspect that relates to ethical issues. That is, what is right, what is wrong, what is moral, what is immoral, and does it conform to the kind of the universal values that our constitution talks about it. So we try to learn to incorporate these things as well, ethical issues. And then we also incorporate L for, that is the legal, constitutional elements. Then one I is for Indian example, another I for international example. So what actually happens that in the classroom, we take up the topic, discuss the topic, and learn through the topics. So generally our classes are divided into three kind of activities. The first that we adopt is the learn craft of writing. So talking about the craft of writing, it involves into how to understand the topic, and while understanding the topic, we quickly figure out that what goes into that topic, and this is the space, yahi par aake, at this space, we help you learn a technique that we have especially developed for the students coming with the kind of for a school system and college system who have got, unfortunately, the kind of education that we are going through that leaves not much scope for imagination and to think about the various aspects of a topic that we take up. Something that you might have heard about, a word like synesthesia. What is synesthesia? You might have heard about this word. It is kind of the one neurological stimulation leads to many cross stimulations. For example, if you are listening to music, and if you listen to music, if you love the music, if you are immersed in the music, that start giving some kind of feeling that you notice the kind of the waves that music is making, then you begin to see some kind of the color in the music, some taste, and then it also arouses the variety of the emotions in that. In the same manner, when we look at a topic could be as simple as that the truth has no color. Simple 4 or 5 word topic. And when you have to write 1200 words. So, two things happen. You have an inherent ability that you possibly can write on the variety of the things that you have already learned in your history classes, polity classes, when you read newspapers very carefully, and the things that you have studied during school days, college days. So all those ideas, all those learnings, they start slowly emerging and flooding out. So how to do that? This is the great technique, the craft that you have developed slowly that you learn. And so it develops some kind of the synesthetic techniques, and then just one topic, truth knows no color, 1200 words. So how the variety of the ideas just start emerging. It's something like that. You might have heard the story about the king of the bears, Jamavant, and with the monkey army of Sri Ramachandra, they are standing at the bank of the Sri Lanka. They are just wondering that how to go and rescue Sita Mata. And the Jamavant reminds Hanuman that you are not aware of the great power that you possess. And that is how it tells the Hanuman that what the great things possibly you can do. They are the inherent powers that you have got. And that arouses, or rather reminds the Hanuman the kind of the power that he have got. So we would develop the technique of the something like called synesthesia here in the classroom, this technique that we have developed. And then variety of the topics you start approaching, that is taking metaphorical meanings. Apart from that, we do another thing. So this happens, learning to recall and use it in essay what you have learned in the past. So how to recall it and how to use that. The second aspect that happens in the classroom is that while discussing mostly P, Y, Qs or other topics, when we develop in collaboration, so we are not methodical that I'm just lecturing you, are listening to that. So we collaborate and we start analyzing and thinking about it. So the many ideas, facts, historical, mythological, literature, that start emerging, and that we talk in the class. So you usually try to take up these events, the facts, and the things that possibly that we are talking about. It could be used in the some variety of other topics that you might be doing in the future. So you developed a kind of a scrapbook, or a reservoir of the notebook, that where many such facts, historical, literature, metaphorical stories, events, data, facts that we discuss relating to the topics. So not only you learn the techniques, but you have a big reservoir that develops of the all these material in generally common parlance way. The students call it material. So plenty of material that emerges. And this slowly we learn the techniques of writing. In the techniques of writing, the craft. So how to approach the introduction part, then body and conclusion. While we are learning that how to do that, we have more than hundreds of the micro skills emerge that enriches our writing, and that we discuss in the classroom. So imagine that in a classroom you are sitting and you have got the various areas where you have curiosities, you have questions, you have weaknesses, the kind of the experience that you are going through, and we discuss solutions to that. So constantly we are working, writing, discussing. Sometimes we are writing just framing the sentences, sometimes we are writing introduction. And then we very slowly you notice that you are almost able to write a complete essay. But constantly whenever we are doing all these things, our focus is always on scoring marks in essay paper. So iska matlab, what actually it means that whatever we do to score higher and higher marks in the classroom. So by the end of these sessions, not only you have developed a unique insight in what UPSC expects in your essay writing, but at the same time you develop skills and allegorical story from Ramcharitmanas that I talked about, that how Hanuman was reminded by the king of Bear Jamavant about his powers. So you have got the certain inherent powers yourself, the abilities which you have never known. And I will surprise you, that will be in great amazement in the first lecture itself. I will show you that you have got the much greater ability than you can even imagine. In the first lecture itself, I will prove you when we are together. So, skills that you develop, and then what I just wrote the word synesthesia. So it is something like synesthesia. You develop that skill that when you think of a topic and when you imagine it, so how to marshal the various ideas, arguments, facts, and bring it together and write a complete essay. At the same time, when it comes to craft, then we constantly learn to how to put your writings in order, impressive, and at the same time, I also try to keep telling you, and we keep learning together, that how to write in a very logical manner, very effective manner, forceful manner, and how to reach our conclusion in such a manner that your examiner himself or herself would appreciate it, that what a wonderful piece of writing that I'm right now watching. And constantly, all through these exercises, occasionally, in between, we shall be talking about the language issues as well. I know, and many students who come from the kind of the background, it's not that their language is big, but the problem is that you come from a kind of the education system where you have been constantly provided notes and books, and you have, by rote learning, you have been taking examinations. So in an essay, which requires your imagination, for example, in essay, you cannot simply mug up something. So you need to develop slightly sharpness in the language, imagination, and whatever difficulties comes in the language learning, development of the language itself, I shall be giving you, constantly giving you simple solutions to that. Even in the classroom itself, while I discuss the various techniques of writing, crafts, and the various approaches of the essay writing, for example, the most important one that I wrote, and then we also develop about the technique of task, because some teachers have begun to say that this is the one very effective approach, but then later on in the classroom we will discuss that this is not the only approach. And in itself, women, I told you about that, the maxim that the person who has got the only solution as a hammer, so tends to see every problem as a nail, but still it is sometimes useful as well. Then there is another technique, that is the arc method, where you start with the powerful opening and slowly building the argument, bring that argument in the sentence and show that why you have started that and how the arguments that you have given proves that this is the one approach to looking at the topic. Then there is another technique that is asking or writing in Q&E method. So these are the 3 or 4 techniques that we talk about it, and you become almost like a commando. So at your disposal, there are the various tools. So examination hall, depending on the topic and how to choose the topic and which topics requires heavier or the greater element of these topics, techniques that you learn and that you approach, that you adopt in your writing, that makes your writing very effective. So we learn that when we take up a topic, how to decide what should be the approach to tackle this topic. And then we also learn that how to marshal facts. That is, bring the ideas, attract the arguments, attract the facts, attract the evidence to prove that topics, to how to marshal that. And then we learn effectively that which approach is most effective in a certain topic. So every day we are practicing, so naturally we are developing it. So marshaling it, and then we approach, then powerful language, writing. As for the, coming back to another thing, many people keep talking about it. As I said, that the people say that the philosophical essays, I rather say that the other essays are reflective or abstract ideas. Unfortunately, I have seen some people also talking about that essay writing is an art, ek kala hai, something like that. It's not like that. If it was just a matter of art and only gifted people could write a good essay, then UPSC would not put it in some kind of the general kind of writing. Actually, it is the good technique of management. Management of what? Recalling and logical approach that we adopt and relevance. So it becomes the so this technique is learned. You don't have to born with the certain kind of the talent or certain kind of the art that is. So it's a technique of management, and all these things can be learned. All these things can be learned. So we have turned the classes into kind of the collaborative approach, and having so much experience, for example, I have been the part of for the last 25 years, continuously the mock interview panel. So I have been speaking to students informally, those who come to appear in the interview boards, that what topics they have written, how they have written their essays. So I have developed a deep insight into how to write a good essay and what are the basic difficulties many good students face. So we shall be taking into consideration finding solutions to the issues that relates to the language, then thinking, then what some students still keep talking about is study material. So we try to put as less burden as possible in order to this study material, and what can enrich your writing. So you will enjoy the whole process, and by the end of this module, you will notice that you have not only grasped the most effective technique of writing an essay depending on the topic that you have chosen and which approach that needs to be adopted. So the kind of a comfort that you feel and the skill level that you develop, it's going to be a great fulfillment. There will be 15 odd classes, and there would not be some kind of the videos that we play, or most of the time that some kind of the ready-made, the things that is being thrown at you, something kind of the PPT. On the contrary, live I will be with you and discussing almost all the nuances of essay writing. So you expect the best, demand the best, and we deliver the best. And whatever that you have heard about or read somewhere or heard or some friends told you or social media, the way it the kind of the image that it presents about the essay writing, you can ask all those questions in the classroom and expect only the best that we can do here. So trying to take care of every aspect of the essay writing and the highest possible score that we can do, and how the UPSC's approach is rapidly changing and the marking pattern is changing and what needs to sharpen the games. So just to be one step ahead of the changing pattern, changing demands, and which skills to be developed and how to simplify those skills that you need to put in writing. All these things we shall be doing in the classroom. A lot of activities that will going on. So hopefully we will have a very, very productive session in this essay module in the 15 odd days that we will be together. And the live, we shall be solving the various questions and the doubts and the problems that you raise as well. So it is going to be quite interactive, and every step you are learning. So activities are constantly going on. So hope to be together in our essay module and only expect the best here. All the best, and very soon, see you, we shall be together and we shall be in the league of the highest essay paper scoring marks students together. All the best and good luck. See you.